Northern Region sports fans and football fans in particular are going to really enjoy this charged up episode of the Fairfax Sports Report here on the Fairfax Sports Network. I'm your host, BJ Kubaroulis of the Connection Newspapers. I'm joined by Paul Frummelt of the Connection Newspapers, and I said charged up for a reason because we've got the Chargers on with us. Quarterback Austin Decker and Coach Mike Lally are joining us tonight for a special edition of the Fairfax Sports Report. We're going to get a chance to talk to them all about the Northern Region Championship victory and, of course, going into the state tournament, their thoughts on their opponent, Varina, and what the future holds for the Chantilly program. Before we get to that, of course, we want to talk about our underwriters, the folks that make this show possible here on the Fairfax Sports Network every week. Of course, we're talking about CCI Screen Printing, 703-978-0257 for all your screen printing needs. Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models at 703-383-6299. Guys, we're also going to be talking about Edison in the Division 5 state tournament. But before we get to the Division 5 state tournament, of course, Division 6 is the big dog in this region and out of the Concord District, what has been described to us several times as the gauntlet or meat grinder of the Northern Region. Chantilly survives and advances and gets to the state semifinals where they'll be taking on Varina. We're joined by Coach, like we said, Mike Lally, and quarterback Austin Decker, who, Coach, really played a big role in this region championship, stepping in for Nate Warwick, who's quarterbacked the team to success this year. Nate, of course, went down with an injury, and how difficult, of course, was it to lose Nate? But then again, you've got a guy like Austin that steps in and really makes a big play, a couple of big plays to really get you guys into the state tournament.
Well, starting off with Nate, obviously he's been our leader all year, and he's done a great job. The kids have responded well to him, and he's been, managing the game and doing everything we asked him. So it was hard to see him go down, and especially with the severity that we were worried it was at first when he wasn't moving. But fortunately, his injury wasn't as severe as initially worried. And so the kids really, responded well to the challenge. And, in the case of Austin, the kids have a lot of faith in Austin. He played last year. He brought us to a victory his first start as a sophomore. Threw for 200 yards as a sophomore in the first game. So the kids knew he can make the plays. And he's a pretty confident guy. Doesn't get too excited. Stays pretty even keel. So that's perfect for a quarterback.
Coach and Austin, before we get to you, because of course we've got to hear about what was going through your mind before getting the start. I want to talk, or getting into the game, I want to ask Paul, because Paul, you were at the Northern Region Championship game, Chantilly and Westfield, obviously. Chantilly knocking off undefeated Westfield for that Northern Region Championship title. You saw, the hit on Nate and kind of, the whole, kind of describe to us what happened and what you noticed going on the field and that sort of thing. What was the scene, I guess, if you could set it for us?
Well, it looked like Nate was going for a scramble, gets hit, the ball pops out, and Nate, falls on the ground. And then, the Westfield's all excited. They get the ball, they recovered a fumble. Their offense is running out in the field, and then Nate's still on the ground. At first, you're like, he's upset he fumbled,
right.
And then you kind of realize that he's not moving. And then everybody, takes a knee, and we're watching. And it was a really, obviously, a scary scene, definitely. And looking over at the Chantilly sideline, everybody was worried. Even Westfield was like, what's going on here? And then we saw the ambulance came out. It was something you don't like to see, going in, especially the first drive of Chantilly's first drive of the game. It was definitely something scary.
And Nate is a guy that we've had on this show with us here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Early in the year, before we coached, we knew that you guys were going to be doing these fantastic things. I do want to mention that I got a chance to talk with Nate's dad, Dennis. Some CAT scans have been done, of course, on Saturday, and they've been with the family doctor this week. And they're going to be going to some more doctors to kind of make sure Nate is recovering well. Of course, it does not look like he's going to be playing for you guys this week. First of all, Dennis Warwick, Nate's dad, wanted me to, of course, thank all the folks that have really, sent heartfelt, responses to the Warwick family. It's a big loss, Coach, but you've got a guy sitting next to you right there that stepped in and did an incredible job. Austin, talk a little bit about when you get the tap on the shoulder to get in there and take over probably something you've been waiting to do for a little while. Talk a little bit about what's going through your mind before you step out onto the field.
Well, first, when I saw Nate go down, it was just I was just worried for him and how he was going to turn out. But once we all knew that he was going to be okay and it was just a concussion, started focusing back on the game because it was a really big game and we needed to get it done no matter what happened. And you know, I had a lot of support from everybody because I played with a few of them last year, and we just had to come out there and you can't be nervous. I mean, I was nervous, but you can't get too nervous in that kind of situation. You just got to go out and play.
Looking at the numbers, 122 yards throwing and a touchdown throwing, 56 yards and 2 touchdowns running. Obviously, how many reps do you get in during practice? I mean, that option offense isn't something easy to get, and you seamlessly jumped in there. So, are you getting a bunch of reps in practice, and you know that offense pretty well?
Well, I ran it last year a little bit, and it's the same offense, option, but I get reps in practice every week, and just in case something like that happens, and when the line blocks that well, and we have all district linemen, it's pretty much just read and pitch, or there's a big enough hole to just run up.
Definitely.
And Coach, it's something I got a chance to talk to you about after you guys defeated Oakton in the semifinals. You guys just kept handing it off to Antonio Cross in the fourth quarter there, and kind of just ate time off the clock and ran out what was just a 2-point victory and really upped it with Mike Quigg making some big interceptions at the end of the game there. Talk a little bit about those linemen and what they have helped Chantilly do this year.
Oh, our line has been the key. The very first meeting we had in August, I told the offensive linemen that they would be the key to our success this year. As well as they play would dictate how far we went. And we've relied on them. We have some big guys, and they've done a great job, starting with our center, Patrick Maddie, then our 2 guards of Zach Halley and Isaac Sine, and then our 2 tackles with Bobby Scruggs and Doug Boyle. And it's been really great to watch them evolve and get better and better. The first week against Annandale was a struggle for someone. In the case like Bobby had never played varsity football, and Isaac was only a sophomore and he had never played. And ever since that game, they just keep getting better and better. We really rely on them.
Now, Austin, let's talk about this last drive, this drive to win the game. You go 61 yards, 15 plays, takes 4 minutes. What's going through your head during this drive?
A lot of things, actually. Like I said, my line blocked really great, so I had all the time I needed to get back there and throw, and I got a lot of reps in practice and just kind of wait for the receivers to get open.
Did things just kind of happen then?
Yeah, it was happening really fast, believe me.
And we got to ask you, Westfield's been a big dog in this region for quite a while. And you guys, maybe if it was another opponent, maybe people wouldn't have given it as much credit. You guys knocked off an undefeated team that a lot of people thought had state championship written all over them. Austin, what was it like to be a part of that out there on the field? Obviously, you moving from receiver back and under center there, obviously being a big part of the season, but to really have your hand dipped in that one, how did that feel?
It felt great. I mean, we'd already played them once in the regular season for the district title, and we let it slip away from us by, I think it was 6 points, and we got another shot at them, luckily, by getting to the regional championship, and it just felt great to get another shot and get the win.
Well, Coach, talk about that the first time you guys played Westfield. Obviously, it's the turnovers. I assume you guys worked on that quite a bit going into this game.
Yeah, we did. We fumbled the ball 3 times in a row in between the first and second quarter. So, we knew if we took care of the ball and we minimized the big plays, because in the first game we had ultimately 4 turnovers and then 2 plays over 40 yards. And we felt if we could eliminate the big plays and the turnovers that we could compete against them. And, that's what we were able to do. And, when we stay close, good things happen.
Also, with Nate going out and bringing Austin, what changed on offense, if anything changed?
I don't think necessarily we really changed much. I mean, we have total faith in Austin. About the only thing that I would say that I changed was a couple of different routes that I called. That Nate likes to throw certain balls and Austin likes to throw other balls, but that's just playing to their strengths. But as far as like the running attack, we didn't change much. They run a little differently, but we called the same plays we would call. We didn't really think much about whether it's Austin or Nate because they're pretty seamless.
Folks, you're joined here by Coach Mike Lally on the Fairfax Sports Report and backup quarterback, now starting quarterback, Austin Decker, who led the Chargers to a Northern Region championship, Paul Frumbelt of the Connection Newspapers. I'm BJ Kubarulis of the Connection Newspapers. Coming up in the show, we're going to get a chance to talk to Richmond Times Dispatch reporter from the Richmond area, who, Coach, is going to tell us all about your upcoming opponent in the semifinals of the state tournament. You guys are playing at home against a difficult team in Varina. We've got a graphic that we want to throw up on the screen just to kind of show the folks at home just what Varina has done. Varina High School is in Richmond. Their overall record is a pretty good one. They're 27.5 PowerPoint total. They're from the Capital District. They're the champions of that district and the Central Region champion. And they are 11-1 actually on the season thus far, having quite the good season over there, Coach. I want to show you their schedule and what they've done this year. They're on a pretty hot streak there. 11 straight victories. Of course, losing that first game just by 4 points to Garfield, and then looks like they pretty much easily handled, except for a couple games somewhere in there, most of their opponents, although I have my opinions as to kind of the Central Region and why that is the way it is. Looking at them as a whole, they're forcing 29.7 points a game, and they're only allowing about 90. They've got 5 shutouts on the year, Coach. So looking at some of those stats and looking at what the Central Region champion has been able to do, have you seen tape on them? Do you know? Obviously, I think you probably have, but what are some things you guys are going to have to do to get through that game?
Well, I think, it kind of stays with what we were talking about with Westfield. We have to take care of the ball, first and foremost. We have to eliminate big plays for them, hopefully get a couple for us, minimize penalties on our behalf, and just, sustain doing what we've been doing, which is, good sound football, good tackling, good blocking, and just run hard. We're not a fancy offense. We kind of line up and come at you, and that's what we're going to try to do.
All right, Coach. Now, they're obviously the Capital District champion, like we saw on the graphic, and the Central Region champion. I was around last year when Oakton went on their run to the state tournament, and the difference between the Northern Region and the other regions in the state is a little different. You guys also, I think, play in one of the most difficult districts in the state. And you see some of these scores, 34-0, 42-7, 34-0. I think maybe the competition level that you guys have played is maybe going to work towards helping you guys get to where you want to be. And, of course, that's holding the trophy when this thing is all said and done. I think the difference between the opponents maybe is going to help you guys. Does that make sense?
Well, we hope that the intensity level that playing in the Concord District and the Northern Region and each week being kind of a playoff status for you or level will help you when you get to that level or to the states and semis. But, they're a very talented team, so those scores are very well earned by their talent. So, we just hope that we've gotten a season of competition that'll help us compete with them.
And Austin, how long did you guys celebrate winning the Northern Region before you started focusing on Varina?
Well, obviously right after the game, and then we all celebrated a little bit that night, I guess, but then just hang out on Saturday and relax and rest up and get back to work on Monday. I mean, we were practicing for Varina, completely forgetting about Westfields.
Have you brought the tempo up, Coach, in practice, or it's pretty much the same thing?
Well, we try to maintain a high level of practice at all times. So, tempo is key. Some days we have a couple of periods there where we just really go real full speed, and tempo is something that has been a factor. The kids hopefully have the energy level right now to keep going. It's been a long year. We're in. We've done 12-week, 13th week of games, but ultimately it's been 17 weeks that we've been out there nonstop practicing. So it's hard on them at this point to keep going.
Austin, to get the tap on the shoulder in the middle of a game after somebody goes down, the adrenaline is obviously up. You're in there. You said yourself, the speed of the game and that sort of thing. Now that you do know, though, that you are going to be the guy going into the state semifinals as a junior, and obviously a guy that Coach Lally and the rest of the team trusts to step in, mentally, how are you handling that and preparing for that challenge?
Well, it's a lot easier, I think, to have a whole week to prepare than just 10 minutes. But I feel a little bit more confident having seen some film and get a few more snaps in practice and know what I'm looking at.
Folks, Coach Mike Lally, Austin Decker of Chantilly football, the Division VI Northern Region champions, knocking off Westfield and headed in to the state semifinals against Verina. Before we close this segment of the show with the Chargers, we want to give our well wishes out to the Warwick family and, of course, Nate Warwick, hoping for a speedy recovery and also wishing the Chargers the best of luck. You know, now that we said on our website at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com, we said this week that, you know, during the season we're pretty impartial as to who we side with, but now that you guys are going to the state tournament, full force behind you, and of course your fans are pretty great ones, as I saw during this tournament. And I want to give you, Coach, the last word. From 0-10 2 years ago to Northern Region champions. That smile is going to be going for quite a while, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, it's been a great run this year. We just hope to keep it going for 2 more games, and our student body has been awesome, supporting us everywhere we go, and just been really exciting time for us.
Good luck to you guys in the upcoming week. Folks, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come on back and talk all about Edison. Of course, Richmond Times-Dispatch reporter will be joining us to talk a little bit more about Verina and give you some insight from their side of town down in Richmond. Also going to give us some insight on Deep Run. We'll have all the Edison Eagles Division 5 information that you will need. Join us back here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report here on the Fairfax Sports Network. I'm your host, BJ Kubaroulis of the Connection Newspapers, and of course, Paul Frummelt of the Connection Newspapers. I want to thank Coach Mike Lally and backup quarterback, now starting quarterback for your Chantilly Chargers, Austin Decker, for coming on the show with us and talking all about the Chantilly Chargers' incredible season. As you can tell, folks from home, the faithful FSN fans, we're down a man. Mirza Krispahich of the Connection Newspapers has had a baby, and we're very excited for him. Congratulations to Mirza and Stephanie, and of course for bringing along 8-pound, 21-ounce Andrew. So congratulations to our colleague Mirza. We're also in the next upcoming week going to be joined by John Marcario, who has joined the Connection Newspapers staff. He will be reporting on all of the Northern Region schools and many schools in the southern part of the county. Folks, speaking of reporters, we've got a reporter that's going to be coming on with us in a minute here from the Richmond Times-Dispatch to tell us all about Deep Run, Edison's opponent in the Division 5 state semifinals. And of course, we just got a chance to talk to Coach Lally and Decker about Verina. Speaking of Verina, we want to show the folks at home what Verina is all about. We got a chance to show you this graphic a little earlier. I want to clarify something that I said. I said they're giving up 90 points a game. What I meant was they've given up 90 points total this season. That equates to about 7.5 points a game. So Chantilly, also a defensive-heavy team. Joining us now is Stephen Lewis of the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Stephen, are you there?
I am here.
Hey, Stephen, want to thank you for coming on to the Fairfax Sports Report here with us. You report on these teams down there for the Richmond Times-Dispatch in the Central Region. Tell us a little bit about Verina, what you know of Verina, and what they bring to the field. What style of football does Verina play?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. And basically, Verina, offensively, they used to be a basically smash-mouth team, but now they've kind of got their versatility, and I think that's helped them out a lot. They can run the ball. They can put 3 tight ends out there. They can go in the shotgun, kind of run that offense like Texas ran with Vince Young, kind of use some misdirection there. So their quarterback right now is Justin Thorpe. Davon Morgan was the quarterback at the start of the season, but he broke his ankle in the first game against Garfield, which is their only loss. So they've won 11 straight since then, and Thorpe has thrown for about 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns, about 7 interceptions. And Morgan has returned, but now he's just playing safety, which is his best position. He's going to Virginia Tech to play safety. Wow. So, but yeah, their defense, as you said earlier, BJ, their defense is their bread and butter. Only 7.5 points a game. They have Morgan back at safety. They have a kid named Jamar Jackson, who's about 6'3", 230. They play him everywhere. He's getting attention from the likes of Florida State and other ACC schools, as well as Morrell Evans, who's a linebacker, about 6'3", 215, 220. Kind of the same thing. They just run those guys around. So they're very tough defensively, and when they don't make mistakes on offense, they're a very tough team to beat.
You mentioned when they don't make mistakes. Have they made some mistakes this year? Definitely.
I've covered the last 2 games that they've had. The 21-0 win over Clover Hill in the first round of the Central Region playoffs. And Thorpe usually is the one that makes the bad decisions. Sometimes it seems like early, he may throw a ball or two that he shouldn't have thrown, and they'll pick it off. That happened the last 2 games. But after that, once he settles down, he's as good as we have in the region, and he's the backup quarterback. So, if they can stay away from those costly mistakes down in their own end, I think they'll have a good chance to hang in there with Chantilly.
And Stephen, you mentioned that it's almost the same team looking in the mirror, because Chantilly has been a team this year. Traditionally, 2 years ago, 0-10 to a better finish last year. But now, Northern Region champions, and they're almost like looking in the mirror, I guess, when they look at Varina, because they're a team that earlier in the season held teams to about almost 5.5 points a game defensively, had a couple of shutouts themselves. And also, you guys over there in Richmond, as you reported, they lost their quarterback early in the first game. Well, Chantilly lost their quarterback in the region final, and the backup, who we just had on as a guest, stepped in and made some great decisions to lead them down the field for a victory over Westfield, which is a team that's won a state title recently. So kind of a team looking at itself in the mirror, and you think about defensive battles. Has Varina been in a defensive battle this year? Have they really faced a tough defense? It seems like they've put up a whole lot of points.
Not recently. I would say Highland Springs is a good defense as well. They're a very good defense. That's the team that they beat for the region title. But it was a defensive battle in the second half. Both teams put up quick touchdowns. It was 14-14 at the half. Highland Springs tacked on a field goal in the third quarter, and then Varina made a big play at the end of the game, about 2 or 3 minutes left. Big pass from Justin Thorpe with DeMarcus King to win it. But they played a team called Thomas Dale. That was only a 9-7 win, but that was early in the season. And then since then, the defense has really been playing extremely well. But the offense has come along and started scoring points too. So it's kind of, I don't think they've been in that defensive battle, that 7-6 or 14-10 type game since then.
Now I'm seeing when they first played Highland Springs in the regular season, 30-14 finish, and then when they get them in the regional final, 21-17. What was different in that game? It's a lot closer in the final.
I think Highland Springs kind of settled down. They are crosstown rivals. 5 miles away from each other. Wow. So all the kids know each other. They're the best teams in Division 6 for us. So, Highland Springs was kind of hyped up, and I think they had about 3 or 4 turnovers that kind of turned the tide of the game. And they were a little more focused when they came in the next game. They knew what to expect. And they had beaten LC Bird, who's been our Division 6 representative the past 3 years. So they kind of knocked them off and went to Varina, and they had the game, really. They had them. But Varina just made a big play at the end and pulled it out.
You mentioned mistakes made, and then you mentioned big plays. Is your quarterback almost like a risk-reward kind of guy, kind of like a Brett Favre, where he's going to try to squeeze it into tight places?
Well, not really. I would have put him in that Brett Favre category, but I know what you're talking about. But like I said, he just seems like those first couple of throws, he's just kind of maybe a little nervous, trying to get into the game. But once he gets that out of the way, he makes great decisions. He's also a good runner at quarterback. I don't think they run that option attack like Chantilly does, but they do run the ball, and he'll drop back, and if he gets pressure, he'll get out of the way and get some yards, pick up some first down. So he's a pretty tough quarterback, and sometimes they'll put Davon Morgan back there, the starting quarterback, and kind of confuse people as well. So they use that to their advantage.
And while we have you, Stephen, you also cover deep run down there in the Central region. It's going to be Central versus Northern in this cycle of the state tournament. Of course, it'll be different next year. But Edison is a team for us in this region that has kind of, snuck up almost. I guess it shouldn't have been a surprise. They've been to the last 3 Division V Northern Region title games. They finally reigned victorious this past week with a win over Stonebridge, the team that pretty much most of us here in the Northern region thought was going to make a run all the way to the state title. Stonebridge was in the state title game last year, but Edison is now the team that has really, built up some late steam headed into this state tournament. Stephen, while we have you on the phone here, we want to ask you a couple questions about them, but we want to show the folks at home what Edison has been able to do this season and their road, their final district standings and what they did during the regular season. We're also going to show you folks at home the postseason accomplishments for the Edison Eagles and kind of how they've gotten there. And here it is. You can see the regular season, they went 8-2, a co-championship in the National District. In the first round of the region tournament, they defeated Yorktown 27-7. And in the region finals, a 31-17 victory over Stonebridge. They're going to be facing Deep Run 2 p.m. on Saturday down in the Central region. Paul, a little bit later in the show, we'll get a chance for you to break down the Stonebridge Edison game. But while we have you here with us, Stephen, we want to ask you a couple questions about what the Eagles of Edison are going to be running into against a Deep Run team. What kind of team is Deep Run?
Basically, Deep Run is a no-mistake team. They will not turn the ball over. They're not going to have dumb penalties like false starts, offside. They're a very disciplined team, and they run a lot of different sets on offense. They can come out of the shotgun and 4 receivers. They'll have 2 backs in the backfield. They'll run a little wing tee. I mean, Edison will see everything that they've ever seen on the offensive side of the ball. Deep Run is not the most explosive team. They don't have a lot of great, fast athletes, but they tackle well. They catch passes. They throw passes. They take care of the ball. And that's basically their strength. They just don't hurt themselves. And, in high school football, sometimes it's just one person here and there that may make a bad play, and they'll take advantage of it. Their quarterback is Deck McGuire. He's headed to Georgia Tech on a baseball scholarship as a pitcher.
Okay.
And he's the quarterback, so obviously he has an arm.
That makes sense.
He throws it very hard, definitely. He has about 1,700 yards passing, 15 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. That's what I'm talking about with those turnovers. And Wes McDaniel is their running back. He's their horse. Small guy. He's only about 5'7", 5'8", but he runs back and run hard. And he has about 20 touchdowns. And McGuire also runs the ball. Sometimes they kind of run out of the shotgun where McDaniel will lead him. And it's kind of funny because McDaniel's only like 5'8", and McGuire is 6'5".
Wow.
So you can see McDaniel kind of lead them to the hole that he's running there. It's tough to defeat. It really is. But he has 12 touchdowns on the year rushing. McGuire does, about 400 yards on the ground.
Wow.
And they have 2 great receivers. Matt Snyder has about 900 yards and 7 touchdowns.
Jeez. And
Derek Jackson is kind of their big play guy. So offensively, they are a load to deal with, definitely.
I'm definitely seeing that with 34.6 points per game. Talk about the defense, though. I see about 16 points per game they're allowing. What is their defensive scheme?
Well, basically, they don't switch up too much. They want to keep everything in front of you. They don't want to, like I said, they don't have that much speed, so they don't want to challenge you too much. But they want to make you drive the field. They're not going to give you those big plays. So, you might have to get 6 or 7 first downs to score the touchdown. And like we said in high school football, sometimes that's very difficult to do because you have breakdowns here and there. But that may not happen now. You're playing the better teams. So, Edison shouldn't, be able to, get themselves in 1st and 15 or 3rd and 10. That's where deep run can take over, get the ball back, and then drive down and get their offense going. So they don't have as many dominant players on defense as they do on offense, but they do have one great linebacker. His name is Daniel Astrop. And, they hit. They also have a guy named Taylor Thacker. And you just listen to that last name, Thacker. It just sounds like, he can hit and he can tackle. They really bring it to you when they get to you. But like I said, they're not as dominant on that side of the ball, but they'll definitely take advantage of your mistakes.
And folks at home, here on the Fairfax Sports Report, you're getting all the inside tips from the Central Region, the equivalent of us down there, really. Stephen Lewis, a guy you can tell really knows his stuff and knows his teams down there. Stephen Lewis, a preps reporter for the Richmond Times-Dispatch, giving us all the insight on the Central Region teams. While we have you on the phone, Stephen, want to throw up a graphic on the screen for our folks at home to see kind of what you were talking about with their offense and what they're capable of doing, kind of their road and what they've done this year down at Deep Run to get to the point that they're at right now. Deep Run is a high school in Glen Allen, Virginia. Their overall record, they're undefeated at 12-0, and their PowerPoint total to end the season, of course, PowerPoints are what determines which teams get into the playoffs. 27.4 PowerPoints for Deep Run, the Colonial District champion and Central Region champion in Division 5. We can look up at the schedule and what they've been able to accomplish and who they've beaten. Of course, they're all victories there in the win-loss column. They started by defeating Atlee and running through Henrico, Hanover, Jefferson, Hermitage, Freeman. The list goes on, and boy, did they put up a couple points this year themselves. Looks like their defense, in the last game against Matoka, Stephen, I'm sure you'll know, maybe Matoka is the equivalent of the Northern Region's Stonebridge. I think a lot of people had Matoka pegged to be maybe the big dog in Division 5 from the Central Region. Is there a feeling down in the Central Region that maybe Matoka underachieved a little bit this year?
Matoka was definitely the team pegged to go back. Stonebridge beat them last year, and the sentiment was Matoka would get back. But Deep Run is a good team as well, and both were undefeated when that game came up last week. Matoka was up 35-7 at halftime.
Wow.
And just started turning the ball over, like I said. And Deep Run scored 3 touchdowns in about 5 minutes to get right back in it, 35-28, and they went on to win it from there. So Matoka didn't underachieve at all. They just caught Deep Run and made some mistakes at the wrong time. But they definitely should have been in this game. I know they wanted to get back from last year. But unfortunately, Deep Run was ready, and they came in and took advantage of their opportunity. Deep Run is a new school for us. They're only in their 5th year. Wow. The first year they played JV football, and then the next year they went 1-9, then 5-5, 8-3 last year, and they lost in the first round of the region tournament last year, and now they're 12-0. So. I mean, what a great job Deep Run has done with Lenny Pritchard as their coach. He played at UVA, a big offensive lineman, so he has those guys going.
Well, Stephen, we want to thank you for joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Your insight, wow, I mean, you really know your stuff down there. Preps reporter for the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Stephen, thanks for coming on, and in the future, when the Central Region takes on the Northern Region, we're going to be blowing up your cell phone to get the insight. What do you say?
Oh, please do, man. Thank you very much. You guys do a great job up there. So let's have a good time up in the Northern Region. I'll be up there Saturday.
Okay,
thanks, Stephen.
Thanks for coming on with us.
All right, thank you.
So, Paul, I mean, Stephen, really gave us some insight there on Varina, first of all, and of course, Edison's opponent in Division 5 state semifinals, and looking at that game and talking about a little bit about Deep Run's capabilities. You look at their schedule, Edison's been a team that has been known to be able to put up some points.
Yeah.
So seeing what Deep Run's defense has allowed this year, about 15.9, well, almost 16 points a game, I think Edison might be able to exploit that.
Well, it's funny when I was hearing Stephen talk about these teams. Verina and Chantilly, they're mirror opposites. And then when I'm here, I'm talking about deep run, it's going to be a shootout. It's going to be a definite shootout with Edison because Edison can put up some points. You can see how many points they put up against Stonebridge. And then when you have a team like Deep Run, I mean, the over-under on total points has got to be like 75. I mean, come on now.
Okay, no betting lines here, folks, but here on the Fairfax Sports Report, we're going to give you some more information on the Edison Eagles for their third time going to the Division V Northern Region title game, finally getting the victory for Coach Vaughn Lewis. Some people believe Coach Vaughn Lewis may be the most underrated coach in the Northern Region, having spent so much time at Edison and having the success that they've had. They finally break through and they knock off a legitimate state title contender in Stonebridge, Paul, the team you got to see a whole bunch of this year. Before we get to what Edison was able to accomplish, Stonebridge, maybe should have been able to achieve more than they did. I think many people had them pegged to go all the way to the final.
Well, definitely. They run through their regular season undefeated, just crushing teams that never even looked like they had a chance of losing. Maybe in their first game against West Springfield, but after that, they just run through their schedule, and then they come up against a team like Edison, which Coach Mickey Thompson said we were not underestimating them. He told me right after the game, right before the game, he said it's going to be a nightmare. Yeah. And you see what happens. I mean, Stonebridge jumped out and got ahead with a touchdown, and actually Edison fumbled and then had an interception in their first two drives. But Edison definitely righted the ship, and it's definitely disappointing for Stonebridge, a team that should have gone to the state championship.
A lot of people want to talk about Devin Brown, Wailu, his nickname over there, the running back at Stonebridge, the Northern Region Offensive Player of the Year. Also, their quarterback, Terrence Glenn, quite a quarterback over there, and they run a tricky offense. Also, such a great defensive side of the ball with Jaron Gavea, someone who was out. Now, Jaron Gavea injured the week before, out for this game. Devin Brown, out for this game by the half because of cramps. Terrence Glenn, out for this game at the half because of cramps. It's a 31-17 victory for Edison, so you can't take that away from the Eagles. But are some people going to try to throw an asterisk up next to it because of the loss of the big three for Stonebridge?
Most definitely. When you see it's Jaron Gavea, the regional defensive player of the year, only a junior. He leads that Stonebridge defense, which is stifling. And when you lose someone like him, someone so important like that, it kills your defense. And then all of a sudden, Edison's driving longer. They're driving further. The offense can't get on the field, and when things like that happen, you can't get into a groove. And I mean, Stonebridge, they did start out well. Like I said, they scored a touchdown, but then they give a turnover on downs on their own 33, which Edison scores and ties it up. And then they have an interception and a fumble before the half. And we're saying Terrence Glenn and Wailu, they left in the second half with cramps, something that's plagued them all year long, by the way. But they're giving up. They have a fumble, an interception before the half starts. So I mean, Edison, they deserve everything they got. They deserve that regional title. But again, it stinks to see Stonebridge, losing their three best players.
But you know what? Like you said it yourself, and that's why I threw the question out there for you, because it's true. Edison had this thing won before the cramps.
Yes.
And a lot of people are going to want to point to these three guys being out and, that's why Edison won. No, Edison had this thing wrapped before these big stars for the Bulldogs went down. So we've talked enough about Stonebridge, and Mickey Thompson, a friend of this show, the Bulldog coach over at Stonebridge, has been a good friend of ours. And so, tough luck to the Bulldogs. But you know what? Coach Vaughn Lewis, like I said, one of the most underrated guys in the region, the coach of the Edison Eagles, longtime coach of the Edison Eagles. We want to show you folks at home that Edison has some stars too, and I feel that I can admit when we're wrong, I don't think we've talked enough about Edison this year. It's kind of been, that team from the National. The National District, not the toughest district, but Edison, the class of that district, and of course now the class of Division V. Let's show the folks at home, the stars of the Edison Eagles, what they've accomplished this year. Of course, we're talking about their quarterback, Sean Lloyd, really leads that team. He can do it in so many different ways, and you see his stats here, Paul.
We got 154 completions in just over 300 attempts, about 500, with 2,442 yards, with 20 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. So definitely a high-flying quarterback there. Carries-wise, running-wise, he has 106 carries for 268 yards with 3 TDs there, he's averaging 2.5 yards per carry. Definitely something good when you have a drop-back quarterback who can throw and run.
And you mentioned it before. This was his 3rd time in the
Yes.
Northern Region Championship game.
This was Lloyd's 3rd time playing for the Northern Region Final. Finally gets it, so congratulations to them, definitely.
And he's just one piece of a puzzle there that Coach Lewis has. They have so many offensive weapons. We want to get a chance to show you another offensive weapon. His main target is a guy named Ben Barber, and we've got some stats on Ben and the rest of the receiving corps there at Edison. Obviously, Lloyd needing some people to throw to. I mean, look at Barber, 44 catches. That's not even the most for the team, but he does have the most yardage at 870 yards and 10 touchdowns. He's got the team lead in average per catch, 19.8 yards a catch.
Per catch.
On 44 catches. Most guys will have 10 catches for 30 yards a catch, because they're stretching them out. But this guy, he's probably one of those guys that's getting the yards after the catch too, because he's a tough guy over there. Then you see Drew Baldwin leading the team in receptions, 569 yards on the season. Only 1 touchdown, but you can see he can stretch it out too, 12.1 every time he touches the ball. 29 catches for Mike Roden, 532 yards, 4 touchdowns. Kevin Carter there, 15 catches, rounding it out with 223 yards, 3 touchdowns for him. And Kendall Wallace, 11 catches, almost 200 yards, and a touchdown. So you see Lloyd's targets there are very capable, and boy, has he really spread it around this year.
One thing that I'm seeing here, you obviously have Barber with the 10 touchdowns and 800 yards. He's the primary target. But you're seeing he is spreading out to 5 different, and at the high school level, being able to hit 5 different receivers many times, and that's something that's very impressive.
So the Edison Eagles now, and having talked to Stephen Lewis from the Richmond Times-Dispatch and getting his insight on deep run, Paul, they're going to run into a team now that's 12-0 and undefeated. But they really just knocked off what we thought was the state champ anyway. So have they already seen the toughest part? That goes back to the question I asked Coach Lally about Division VI football, being from the Northern Region and playing in the Concord District. They play in arguably the toughest district Chantilly does in the entire state. So I think their road may be a little easier going up against these Central Region teams. I think Edison, would they be hurt by playing in the National District? It doesn't seem like that's the toughest district to come out of.
It's still tough with teams like Yorktown, obviously, and you see when they played Yorktown in the semifinals, then playing Stonebridge. One thing, and this is not a slight towards Edison, but I think Stonebridge underplayed. They underachieved in that game, and I think Deep Run might be the toughest team that they've faced all year. But with the offense they have and the points that Deep Run is allowing, definitely going to be a shootout.
Deep Run allowing about 16 points a game at 15.9 points a game. Sean Lloyd and Ben Barber are going to look to exploit that. I think you're going to see a couple Edison touchdowns. And Paul, I don't want to put any hex on anybody, so I'm just not going to pick this game.
I'm always right.
I picked Oakton to beat Chantilly, and I picked Madison to upset Stonebridge, and I think we saw how that turned out, folks. So I'm not afraid to say when I'm wrong, and boy, was I ever wrong. But Paul, I guess, looking at the numbers and seeing what you've got on the offensive side of the ball for the Eagles, who are also a good defensive team.
I have the stat here. They held Stonebridge to 14 points in the first half. Stonebridge is scoring 35 points in the first half usually. When you hold a Stonebridge offense that has their 2 stars to 14 points, that's a very good defense.
Stonebridge came into the Division V Northern Region Final against Edison about 43 points a game they were averaging in the last couple of games before that. So Stonebridge is definitely a team. I mean, that's a legit win for the Eagles. So looking ahead for the Eagles, Paul, I guess what do you think will make the difference in this Deep Run Edison matchup?
It's how effective Lloyd is and Barber. And if they are connecting, if Lloyd has Barber in his sights the whole time and they're connecting and they're clicking, I have a feeling about Edison. I do. I'm going to have to go with Edison over Deep Run.
It's been a long time since a Division V team has won a state title here in the Northern Region. I believe Edison might have been the last team to do it almost 20 years ago, if my numbers are correct. We'll check that for you. But it's been about 20 years for a Division V team. Hampton has won about 14 titles. So Hampton, the big dog who defeated Stonebridge last year, already out of it. So the road could be cleared for the Edison Eagles.
Well, they still got the undefeated Deep Run, and so we'll see.
Folks, there's so many good games that the Fairfax Sports Network has put on this year. Of course, we want to get a chance to show you the Fairfax Sports Network's Game of the Week, and there's only two choices this week as the two teams that are alive. Where will the Fairfax Sports Network be this week?
How far do they want to travel?
The Fairfax Sports Network, 20 years of service, going to be doing it for, well, hey, maybe 20 more. But they've got a new truck and a new way of putting on some games. Of course, they're all available on demand, so you'll get a chance to pull the next game on demand, as well as the last couple of games that have been put on. Chantilly, as you see there, will be taking on Varina in the FSN Game of the Week. It's the VHSL AAA Division 6 State Semifinal. Chantilly versus Varina. Of course, that game is at Chantilly. Boy, does Coach Lally got to be loving that.
Well, I believe that even if it was at Varina, the Purple Platoon would be out in full force.
The Purple Platoon, of course, the Chantilly fans that are so supportive, stand almost during the entire game, and really just a tough crowd to play in front of.
It almost looked like there are more Chantilly fans at Westfield than Westfield fans.
And Westfield does have a very good fan base.
Pack a stadium, definitely. I'd like to run through, and now that we have the Northern Region champions figured out this week, I'd like to run through the first team and first team offense and first team defense. We have Pete Lalick from West Springfield, obviously at quarterback, first team offense. At running back, obviously Wyloo Brown from Stonebridge. Maximilian from Yorktown and Josh Wells from West Potomac round out that running back core. At wideout, Irvin Gardner from Oakton and Ben Barber, who we just talked about from Edison.
Junior only.
Only a junior.
Only a junior is Ben Barber. So to make that list with a guy like Irvin Garner from Oakton, that's a very big honor, and obviously he's actually earned that. So we got to give that to Ben, helping his team get to the region final victory, and obviously into the state tournament. There's a tight end on that list that people who are watching the show might recognize the name, who have seen the last couple Fairfax Sports Network's Games of the Week. Who is that tight end on the first team?
Is Danny Sims, obviously from Chantilly. The best tight end in the Northern Region. He's shown that time and time again.
Big target.
Big target for Warwick. And then when Decker comes in, look, who does he look for?
Right.
He looks for Sims.
Kind of a safety valve. I mean, when you're a young guy and he's a junior, when you get in there on the big stage, you're looking for that guy who's proven. Now, Decker, he was at quarterback, but he was a little bit hurt because he was a receiver. You can't throw to yourself. So, Sims is a big target for him out there.
And then we at tackle, offensive line, got to give love to the offensive line, of course. James Bennett from West Potomac. Guard, Patrick Connery of Loudon Valley. Again, another Chantilly guy, Patrick Madeye. At center, guard, Marshall Moore from Langley with those huge linemen.
That's a guy that's getting a lot of Division I AA looks. Got a chance to talk to Marshall after a tough loss over at Langley. It wasn't the greatest season for the Saxons at 4-6, but Marshall is definitely a player. He's a guy that's lived in the weight room, and Coach John Howerton, who has instilled that weight room atmosphere there, says he's kind of the king of that, and he's really beefed himself up. He's a big guy, and he's definitely going to catch on at the next level.
I'd also like to talk a little bit about, Danny Sims and Patrick Madeye both on that Chantilly offensive line. And after the game, Coach Verbanek from Westfield, we're talking about the Chantilly line. He says, we just weren't big enough for Chantilly.
Right.
And that's something to say when a Verbanek coach team isn't big enough for your line. So definitely that Chantilly offensive line, as Coach Lally did say, a great, great asset to the team. We have Andrew Nuss from Stonebridge, the Notre Dame recruit.
He's a guy though that you've got a chance to talk to about a bunch this year. And I remember, a story I read from you at the Connection newspapers. You talked to Nuss about him signing early and him being a target. And as a lineman, you've got some other guys trying to make a name for themselves that are really coming after him. Obviously he handled it well, being on the first team all-region, but you saw him a couple more times this season. How did you see him perform? Is he a Notre Dame type kid?
Of course he is. Notre Dame obviously is one of the elite programs, but obviously he was a leader for that Stonebridge offensive line, which made holes the size of the trucks could run through for Wyloo and Terrence to run through. So definitely he deserves to be on that list. He deserves to be on the first team. He's a great tackle, and obviously Notre Dame sees something in him, and so he's definitely on that list. For place kicker, Garrett Watson, we've all heard about him and his 49-yard field goals, and so he obviously knows a no-brainer. Player of the year for offense was Wyloo Brown from Stonebridge. Just a great player, and it's sad to see his season end. Only 1 year with the Bulldogs, and he's he's graduating.
Bishop O'Connell transfer comes in and takes the region crown for individual honors, at least for Offensive Player of the Year, over 25 touchdowns easily this year, and over 1,500 yards easily this year is Wyloo Brown. So obviously, you said the line really helped him there, but he obviously earned it.
That's what, yeah, just like that Chantilly line, that Nuss and that Stonebridge line really giving some holes for Wyloo. Now we're going to go over to defense with Zach Halley from Chantilly, a defensive end. That Chantilly line, definitely. Mike Lindholm from Herndon. James Pratt from Edison, another Edison guy. Dean Kenny from Madison. And DeMarcus Lee from Mount Vernon round out the defensive linemen. At linebacker, the Concord District Defensive Player of the Year, also a heck of a running back for Westfield, Brian Kennedy. He's a small guy,
yeah,
but and obviously a fast guy, being the big play running back for Westfield, but he can hit. I've heard from the sidelines, hearing the crack of the helmet, he can definitely hit. Linebacker Alex Stell from Yorktown, Antoine Broxton from Annandale, Robert Walther from Stonebridge, a big linebacker for them. Austin Morris from Chantilly. Now, Austin Morris was out 3.5 games. He was injured, and he did not play 3.5 games, still made first team all-region defender.
That's saying something right there. When you can miss on nearly a third of the regular season and come in and still make the first team all-region, especially at the defensive back position, which is a position in this region that has been traditionally strong. So for him to come in and be able to do that, I know number 9 over there at Chantilly has got to be feeling pretty good about himself, and of course to be able to come back and have his team still playing. That's half the battle as well. So good for Austin Morris and his return over at Chantilly.
Then we have Matt Seeger from Herndon, Drew Baldwin, who's going to have a pretty tough game for Drew Baldwin for Edison, going to have a pretty tough game here coming up. And Jaron Gouveia for Stonebridge, we mentioned him. He was injured for the last game. Obviously a big factor for him. He was also the Defensive Player of the Year. Then for punter, Tyler Benincourt from West Springfield. Returner, Irvin Gardner, his second time to be on the list. And utility player, Shane Hawley from Lake Braddock. And that is the All-Region Players of the Year.
So the All-Region Players of the Year and the All-Region First Team is in. You can read about all these players on the Connection Newspapers website if you're not already subscribing to the Connection Newspapers. And God, Paul, I wouldn't know why anyone wouldn't.
Come on now.
The Connection Newspapers is online, www.connectionnewspapers.com, and we write about this stuff every week. That's why we know it.
You want to read a full story of Stonebridge against Edison, Chantilly against Westfield? It's online.
And like we mentioned, folks, Paul and I here every week. We're going to be joined next week by John Marcario, a new reporter for the Connection Newspapers. We'll be taking over the southern part of our coverage area, about up to 19 papers now, Paul, and the workload just keeps increasing.
You know.
Okay, folks, want to go and thank our underwriters, the folks that make this show possible here on the Fairfax Sports Report, on the Fairfax Sport Network. Before we do that, we want to talk about the FSN Game of the Week. This week, VHSL AAA Division 6 State Semifinal. Chantilly will take on Verina, the Central Region champion. Games are available on Cox Digital Cable on Demand. And of course, you can check the website for details. That website is www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. The FSN Game of the Week also re-airs on Channel 10. That's this channel, Paul.
Of course.
For those of people at home.
Just keep the channel on. You're bound to hit the Northern Region semifinal.
This week, the Northern Region semifinal, Oakton at Chantilly. This was taped originally on November 18th. You might recognize my voice from that game. Got a chance to hang out with Coach Pete Bendorf of South County, and that was a great game that Chantilly obviously won. That runs Saturday at 4:30 and Monday at 3:30 on Cox and Comcast Channel 10. I think we're seeing a trend here with the Channel 10. www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. FSN is on the web. You can read about Paul Frummelt's interesting life on his bio, interesting links, photos up there this week from celebration shots of the Northern Region champions holding their trophy. The Fairfax Sports Network for all your Paul Frummelt needs. For all your needs, Paul Frummelt. CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs.
Of course.
703-978-0257. And Quality Care Ford Service Center. They service all makes and models at 703-383-6299. Folks, I want to thank you for joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report on the Fairfax Sports Network. Before we get going, of course, we want to send our well wishes out to Nate Warwick and the Warwick family and hope for a speedy recovery. I know that was quite a gruesome sight as he was flown off of the field
Extremely
in a helicopter this past week. So those things do happen in real life, folks, and we're just glad that he's going to be doing okay. Also, the basketball team is going to be looking for Nate to come back, too. Also want to send our well wishes out to Mirza Krispahich, former sports editor at the Connection newspapers, whose little baby boy Andrew came along this week just in time for Thanksgiving, so a lot to be thankful for.
He can't hear us over the crying right now.
That's true. He's probably asleep right now. He's going to wake up for his night shift. Okay, thanks for joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report. We'll be back next week with all your football needs, and we're going to start getting into basketball pretty soon. I know you basketball junkies out there are looking for your basketball fix. Of course, you know we're going to have all that information for you. So, thanks for joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report on the Fairfax Sports Network.